What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about DC: The New Frontier. Now, this was technically an Elseworld story. It did not take place in DC's main universe, but the purpose of the story was to give us a book that showed the end of the golden age of DC Comics, but the beginning of the silver age of DC Comics. How Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman met each other and the rest of the League, and how they came together to protect the world. It was a 6-part miniseries that came out in the early 2000s. So I do hope you enjoy. What is going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from all of the different comic book companies out there. Today, we're going to jump back over to DC Comics because we're going to begin our coverage over DC New Frontier. This is another world in the DC multiverse where we focus on the heroes being placed around the 1940s and the 1950s. Now, we're only going to cover the first issue of this series because each of the issues are very long. So each video will cover one of the books, and this one gives us an idea of what the world is like, but also gives us Hal Jordan in this world as well. So if you do like today's comic book video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. But I do hope you enjoy. Now, the way this book opens up, we pick up on Dinosaur Island in the year 1945. And of course, this is after World War II. Now, Dinosaur Island is a very intriguing thing, where you have an island that is full with dinosaurs, but we're going to learn later on that once you arrive on this island, you have a hard time leaving this island. But we pick up with a man named Johnny Cloud and his dog Pooch, where he is writing a story on the wall about a group he was part of called the Losers, giving us a story on what happened with him and the rest of his squad once they had arrived on this island. We jump back before they crashed, and we learned that at the tail end of World War II, America was going around and grabbing scientists for their post-war plans. Now, one of the scientists was being transported by a plane, but the plane crashed. The squad that was on the plane was being led by Richard Flagg. Now, before diving farther, I want to point out who is on the Losers, which is Sarge, Cloud, Gunner, and William, also their dog Pooch. And so the Losers were sent in to find Richard Flagg, his squad, the scientists, grab the plane and bring it back to the mainlands. Except, of course, when they find the plane and bring it back, they lose connection to the mainland. But also the fact, while being in the ocean, their boat crashed and lands on Dinosaur Island. And the way the boat crashed, it seems that something in the water sent them flying to Dinosaur Island. Now, of course, when they crash on Dinosaur Island, you have Pooch, which is the squad's dog, sense something is coming towards them, which is a T-Rex, and the squad begins to panic because they never saw a live dinosaur before until this point here. And so they have to grab whatever they can that will help them fight against this dinosaur. Except in the middle of the fight, you have the Losers realize that their team member Gunner was killed by an attack by the dinosaur. And this is a shocking moment for them because in a matter of minutes, they lost one of their own. But they can't focus too long on the fact they lost their friend, because there is still a T-Rex trying to kill them, and so they have to continue to fight the monster before they join their brother in the afterlife. They were able to use a bazooka to shoot off an arm of the T-Rex, which makes him walk away to lick his wounds. But for the losers, they have to pay their respect to their brother. They only were on the island for a matter of a few minutes and they lost one of their own. Now, of course, they don't stay there. They actually continue to go deeper into the island to see if they can find other humans on the island. With them doing that, they were able to find Richard Flagg and his squad stuffed in a cave. Remember, the losers were sent to find Richard Flagg, his squad, and his scientists. Now, when they find the cave, they also find Japanese and Australian army stuff as well. More proof that once you get on this island, you are stuck there on this island. We come to find out the next day, Sarge went down to bury the body of Gunner, while Cloud and Storm stayed in the cave. But they were woken up by what sounds like missiles being fired. That tells them that Sarge is in trouble, except when they get outside the cave, they are greeted by pterodactyls, and of course, something else they were not prepared for. And so they have to run for their lives and hope to get to Sarge before he dies. Except while they were trying to get down there, of course, one of the pterodactyls grabs Storm. And this is how Cloud became the last surviving member of the Losers. Now when Cloud gets back to the cave, he is greeted by Richard Flagg, the man he and the Losers were sent to go save. Where you have Flagg tell Cloud that Cloud is the last member of the Losers, that Sarge also died. And so those missiles they heard earlier were basically Sarge's last attempt to survive. But you have Flagg reveal that he has micro copies of the notes of the scientists they were sent to grab and bring back to America. And so you have Flagg and Cloud agree they need to find a way to get back to America. You have Flagg and Cloud working their way through the island and making it to the shore, where of course they find a boat. But here comes the twist of this moment. You have Cloud tell Flagg to leave, that Cloud is going to stay and kill the monster that killed Gunner, the T-Rex of course. And so you have Flagg leave on the boat and you have Cloud go back to kill the dinosaur, which of course we pick up on the present day. And we see how Cloud finished writing on the wall, but of course his goal is to wrap everything up one last time to try to kill off the dinosaur. Sadly, this section ends with Cloud dying, being the last member of the Losers. Also, the dog dies as well, which is really sad to see. But that is how the Losers came in and went in this universe. 3 years later in 1948, we get to pick up with the star of this issue. Well, to me, it is the star of this issue, where we see a young boy sneaking into the Air Force Base, where we see that it is Hal Jordan himself. The reason why he came here is because he wants to meet his hero Chuck Yeager, who is actually a real person in the real world. But the point of this is that we see Hal meeting his hero, and Chuck can see the jacket that Hal is wearing. The jacket belongs to Hal's father, Martin, and Chuck knew Martin. And so he hangs out with Hal, but we also see this inspires Hal to become a pilot. The second chapter of this book, we pick up with our man in Gotham City, who is part of the Justice Society. As we know in DC Comics, before Justice League, we had the Justice Society. Our man was being chased by police officers on rooftops, where it ends with all of them dying by falling from the rooftop. This is where we get a newspaper where we learn a little bit of what this world is like for superheroes. This was written by Iris West, and she writes that around this time, vigilantes were told they had to register to work for the government or retire being a hero. Our man and much of the other members of the Justice Society did not register, of course. Now we learned the reason why this was being forced is because of the House on Un-American Act, where this was this blacklist of people who the government thought they were acting un-American and trying to force communists into the country. One of them was a popular hero named Roy Raymond. With Roy Raymond being one of the heroes on that list, of course, they put the rest of the Justice Society on that list as well. The government wanted them to register and reveal who they were, except the heroes went into hiding, and that was a sign they retired. Now you had Superman and Wonder Woman register with the government. The government did send Superman to go and grab other unregistered heroes like Batman. We learn the two of them fought, but Batman was able to beat Superman with some kind of chemical. To close on this section, we learn that President Eisenhower pushed the formation of Task Force X, which is known as the Suicide Squad. This team is being led by Richard Flagg, and this team was a way to handle any big threats rather than trying to rely on heroes for help. We skip forward in time again, and we pick up in 1953. This is the point where America is in the Korean War. We pick up with Hal Jordan and his friend Ace Morgan, how they talk about them both being pilots at the end of the war. Except, of course, the war just ended and not everyone knows the war has ended. And so while they were in the air, they got attacked by some Korean soldiers. This is the moment you had the book tell us that Hal does not believe in firing his bullets, but he would leave targets in the view for his partners to kill them. Except this time, Hal's jet gets hit badly and he has to eject out, but he is unconscious. And so Ace Morgan had to kill off the targets, do a flip in the air, and grab Hal Jordan so he can release the parachute for Hal to land safely on them. But the story gives us Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, where we see them on a military base being reporters in a way. While being there, you have Lois Lane greeted by a pilot named Steve Johnstone. While Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen get on his chopper, he gets a call about going to pick up Hal Jordan. Ace Morgan already has been picked up, safe and secure. This issue closes on the fact that when Hal wakes up, he wakes up in Korea territory, their enemy, and these guys don't know that the war is over. But this section is more showing the fear in Hal when it comes to him being in a territory where he could be killed. Now, luckily for him, Lois Lane, Steve Johnstone, and Jimmy Olsen are flying in and throwing grenades to get rid of the soldiers so that he is able to get on the chopper. But the first issue are with us seeing them flying away from the Korea area, and we learn a little bit of this world in this book. Next week, we will learn more.
What is going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book videos from different comic book companies. This time, we're going to jump back over to DC Comics and continue our coverage over the DC New Frontier storyline, where we pick up with issue number 2 in this video, where it gives us more characters we love, but also shows that for some characters, they are beginning to realize why the world truly needs heroes. So if you like today's comic book video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. But I do hope you enjoy today's video. With this next issue of the New Frontier, we are now in chapter 4 in this overarching story, where we pick up this time with Martian the Manhunter in the year 1955. And the way we meet him is through another character named Sal Edrell. Sal never saw Martian Manhunter's real appearance, but when he does, he has a heart attack. But with his dying words, he tells the Martian the Manhunter that the world is not ready for someone like him. We also learn that Saul somehow teleported Martian the Manhunter here, and now he's stuck on Earth. Now we finally get a look into the idea of Superman and Wonder Woman in this world. We only got a newspaper that spoke about them in the last issue. Here we actually see that Superman and Wonder Woman were sent to other countries that were heavily affected by the war. Except when Superman flies by an area, he sees a bunch of dead bodies on the ground and wonders what happened. That is when he follows the voices that sound like they are celebrating their latest victory, where he finds Wonder Woman and a group of ladies celebrating, telling him it was them who killed those people he found. Now, for Superman, what they did is wrong, but you have Wonder Woman explain that when she was out here on a mission that she was sent on by America, she found these women who were captured in cages, realized that they needed to be free. And so you had Wonder Woman break them out and gave them the ability to decide what they should do to their captors. For Superman, he can't believe that Wonder Woman just stood there and watched a bunch of people get killed. This leads into Wonder Woman really giving Superman a life lesson about the world, how they were sent by America to be a way of hope to these other countries. But she has to explain that he has to realize that just coming by and handing a bunch of flags does not help people forget about the people they lost in the war. In reality, it is just a way to give someone a temporary moment to feel happy until they realize that they lost family members. Now, Superman tells her that he has to report this back to their superiors, and she tells them, there's the door. But getting back to Martian the Manhunter, who is hiding in Gotham, we watch him watching television as a way to learn about the world that he is trapped on. This is more of him using his ability to change his appearance to anything he sees in TV, where you have him decide to take the appearance of a detective he saw on TV, where he decides to go by the name John Jones and be a detective in Gotham City. Then on a page, we learn three things in the year 1956 and 1957. The first being that in 1956, the Flash was born, which is a huge thing. But in 1957, we see that the Soviet Union was able to launch Sputnik, something to orbit the Earth. The second Sputnik was Russia's first attempt to put a dog in space. With that happening, Eisenhower stated that America will put more money into their space program. Once again, we pick up with Martian the Manhunter, and we see him being detective in Gotham City. Also, he is working alongside with Slam Bradley, another detective in Gotham City. Now, they're on a case where a child has been kidnapped by a group of people, where we learn that this group is called the Sentry, which is honestly a weird name to be honest, but they are some kind of cult, and they are doing a ritual. Now, Martian the Manhunter and Slam see Batman fighting against this cult. Honestly, this was a moment where you have Batman showing John about how capable of a fighter he is. But this is the moment where you learn that John, Martian the Manhunter, is weak to fire like his main DC Universe counterpart. The big thing about this moment is that Slam sees John being scared of fire, wondering what is going on. Also, before that, the way John was moving around, it was not normal for Slam. So he wonders what is going on with him. But Batman and the detectives are able to beat this cult. The one thing to point out is that Batman scared the child he just saved. And also, Martian the Manhunter found the book the cult was using. Chapter 5, we pick up in Las Vegas, and this is an important moment of this book, where we have a boxing match between Ted Grant, aka Wildcat, and Cassius Clay. This is a big moment because you have more characters introduced to us, like Ted Grant, but also his fiancée, Selena Kyle. Oliver Queen and Lois Lane is there too, but she is with Bruce Wayne. On the other side of the arena stands, we get the return of Hal Jordan and Kyle Morgan as well, where we see Ted Grant trying to fight to keep his championship belt. So we see him struggling at first, where it seems that he might lose this fight. Except, of course, he is able to come back to win the fight at the very last second. But after the fight, at the after party, we get to learn more about how the characters feel about vigilantes in this universe. Also the fact where some characters are at. For example, you have Oliver Queen tell Bruce Wayne and Lois Lane that Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern, and also Wildcat Justice Society's friend, was also watching the fight, but had left. Now, we get an idea that Lois Lane does not like the idea of vigilantes, but she liked the ones who work for the government like Superman and Wonder Woman. But the conversation is over because we get the return of Richard Flagg and Carol Ferris. Of course, Richard Flagg is the leader of Task Force X, a group that works for the government. Carol Ferris is known in the main DC universe as the love interest for Hal Jordan. Now, another character we learn that is there is the character Iris West. Now, this is our first time seeing her in person. We learn she was around because she wrote the article we saw in our last video. But she is on the phone talking to Barry Allen, where we learn a year before this, he gained his Flash powers. But while on the phone with her, that is when Captain Cold appears and attacks the after party. For Iris, she is lucky that she was on the phone with the Flash because he was able to leave Central City, find his ring so he can change into his Flash outfit, and then finally head over to Las Vegas where the fight was happening at. Where Captain Cold is at. Now when Flash gets there, of course, he checks up on Iris West to make sure she is okay. But also, this is the moment you have Captain Cold reveal to us that with the first year of Barry Allen being the Flash, they have fought a few times before. He left Central City hoping not to deal with the Flash, but he had a plan just in case, which he tells the Flash he had planted 6 bombs across Vegas and Flash must find them. So Flash leaves to go find them. Now remember again that in this universe, if you weren't a superhero who worked for the government, a lot of people really looked at you as a bad influence for the world. But we see that old heroes who were part of the JSA, like Ted Grant, actually like what the Flash is doing, which is saving lives, but mentions that Jay Garrick would love to see this new Flash because Jay Garrick was the first Flash like in most DC universes. But while Flash realizes that while getting all of the 5 bombs, that the 6th bomb he is looking for does not exist, he figured that out, that Captain Cold lied about the 6th bomb to keep him busy. And so you have Flash go back and take out Captain Cold to save the day. But getting back over to Hal Jordan and Ace Morgan, we learn how their lives have been after the war at the end of our last video, when we learn that Ace Morgan has become somewhat famous in life. Also, that he is going to be flying some kind of plane across the country for a publicity stunt. So everything for Ace Morgan has been going great. But for Hal Jordan, it has been the opposite, where we learn that after the war, Hal Jordan, he has been struggling after the war. That after he killed that soldier in our last video, it actually haunted his mind. Remember that back in our last video, we learned that Hal never killed in the war until that moment. So with that, he never got over it and learned how to. And so you have Ace Morgan give him some words to tell him that encourage him to get over it. But the point of this section is to show that Ace Morgan had actually wanted to tell Hal about setting him up for a job at Carol Ferris' company. And so Hal is excited because his dad used to work there and happy to go there. The book ends on that point right there. What is going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. This time, we're going to jump back over to DC Comics and continue our coverage over DC New Frontier. We're going to pick up with issue number 3. And in this one, it is more of less action and more building up the idea of something coming to Earth. But certain pieces must be moved to get the heroes ready for this big threat. And so if you like today's comic book video, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come like this in the near future. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's video. So with this issue, we pick up a little bit after where the last video left off at. If you remember that at the end, Hal Jordan's best friend from the war, Ace Morgan, talked about flying a B-47 plane. It was supposed to be him and I think 6 other people on the plane flying across the country. The reason why we open up with this in the opening pages of this issue is because we see the plane is falling apart. That the plane began to malfunction. At the end of this sequence, the plane began to fall open, where you would think that everyone on the plane was killed off. Then we pick up with one of the survivors, which is Matthew Ryan. We learn that what we saw was him having a dream of what happened months ago. But ever since that accident, he has been having nightmares of that moment. He has been living with a circus, being their daredevil character by doing all these crazy extreme events as a way to help him get over that moment. But with the dream coming every single night, he finally decided that he needs to go back to the crash site, hoping that will help him get past the nightmares, because he wants to know how he survived something like that. But through Matthew Ryan, we learn as he goes back to the crash site that there were other survivors of the accident. That includes Ace Morgan, the one who was driving the plane. But him, Matthew, and a few others survived the crash that should have killed them off. And so the big question is, why in the world did these men survive? Is there something special about them that kept them alive? There must be a good reason for their survival. Now, getting back to what seems to be one of the 2 main characters of this book, which is Hal Jordan, where we see him on a date with Carol Ferris. It is her extending the offer for him to work for her family corporation, going to be testing different planes for them, where she has to tell him that they cannot date because she is going to be his boss. Of course, he tells her that they can date because he does not start working until 2 weeks down the road. We skip over to Tennessee, where we are picking up with John Henry. Now, surprisingly, not a lot of fans know of John Henry. He is still in the main DC universe, a character who was one of the 4 Supermen to replace Superman when he died back in the death of Superman. Well, we pick up with John Henry at the aftermath of his home being burned down and the death of his family. All of this was done by the KKK. Of course, a known group of people who hate black people. And so he talks about how he has to keep pushing forward in life so he is able to get revenge for his family. Before we see what John Henry will do next, we skip over to Task Force X, this universe version of the Suicide Squad, which right now it is Richard Flagg, someone we saw multiple times by now in the books, and he is the leader of the Suicide Squad Task Force X. Also, he is with Jess Bright and Karen Grace. There was a fourth member on the team. That was Huge Evans. The reason why I mentioned his name last is because he dies in this section. The team was sent into New York to take care of a pterodactyl. Huge Evans was grabbed by the dinosaur, but he was able to save the day, thanks to the pterodactyl biting into one of his grenades, which blows them up. So Huge Evans dies as a hero. We get a page that shows us Huge Evans' funeral, and honestly, it is just the team talking about the dinosaur. For most of them, it was their first time seeing one. But of course, Richard Flagg talks about him being on Dinosaur Island, something we saw in the first issue of this series. We do get another couple pages giving us more information about John Henry making his hammer, which of course is going to be his main weapon to use in this series. It is him getting revenge for his family. Now, focusing on the main character of this book, we pick up with Hal Jordan, who is arriving to his first day of work at Carol Ferris family business. Except when he pulls up to the place, he is greeted by Richard Flagg, where Richard Flagg lets Hal know about the real purpose of Carol Ferris testing site, that this is going to be more of an Air Force base now because the American government is working on a project, except Hal does not have the clearance to know about the project just yet. So we are going to learn more about this project down the road. But after their meeting, we get a few pages of Hal doing different kinds of tests for Carol Ferris. But while we get these different images, we learn he wrote letters back home to his family, his brothers, and his mother. In those letters, we learn that he tells them what is going on there at Carol Ferris. The fact they have him doing different forms of tests, and those tests makes him wondering what all these different tests are for really. Also, he tells his family about him dating Carol Ferris and that he is head over heels for her. But after we see the letters and him do those tests, at the end of this section, he is greeted by Richard Flagg, where Hal shows to Richard and the rest of the higher-ups that he does not like Richard Flagg by making a few comments about how it sucks talking to him. After that moment, we pick up in the break room where you have some of the guys talking to Hal Jordan about Task Force X. This is our first time learning about them truthfully. First, Karen Grace. She was a nurse in the Korean War. She was on a plane that got shot down. Her and a few other men survived, but got stuck in the middle of the ocean for weeks. Once they found her, it was just her on a small raft they made. Everyone else died. For Jess Bright and Huge Evans, they were part of an atomic test site. The problem is that something went wrong with one of their tests, but they were the only two to make it into the safe zone, while the other 5 who were on the test site died. And so with that happening, it left a toll on them mentally, just like Karen Grace. For Richard Flagg, it focuses more on the idea of how great of a person he is. But over his time being the leader of Task Force X, a lot of people had died under his watch. For that, it has been hard for him to deal with, because these are people who were under his watch. All of them are dead except Karen Grace and Jess Bright. Finally getting back to John Henry, we pick up with the KKK actually attacking a black church. They are killing off black people who were attending the church. But while the Klan was leaving, that is when they are greeted by John Henry. and we can see that he is equipped with the hammers he made to take on the clan with. Then we pick up with the second main character of this entire series, Martian the Manhunter. Remember that he is in Gotham City pretending to be a detective, but we see him taking the day off from that and going to the movies. Now, before his movie starts, a newsreel talks about a new superhero team, the Challengers of the Unknown. These are the characters who survived that plane crash from the beginning of this video. Ace Morgan, Red Ryan, Walter Haley, and Rocky Davis. They will be there to challenge threats to mankind. And so we do get an idea of what happened to those characters who survived the plane crash. But after that, you have the movie begin. This is the main reason why Martian the Manhunter came to the movies for. He wanted to see a movie about Mars and see how much humans know about him, which of course is nothing because humans never met an alien like him before. So he thought maybe they had some ideas, but of course found out they don't. So he goes home laughing at humans. Except when he gets home, of course, he is greeted by Batman. Thanks to Batman being Batman, what I mean is that him being a great detective. That Batman knows that Martian the Manhunter is not really a human. That he is an alien in disguise as a human. But the reason why Batman came here is because he needs the help of Martian the Manhunter. Because remember, in the last issue, they stopped a cult known as the Sentry. I know I just butchered that name again. But anyways, they stopped a small section of that group. They were doing a ritual on a kid. But Batman and Martian the Manhunter were able to save the kid. Well, Batman tells Martian the Manhunter that there have been incidents across the world relating to the cult. And so the question is, what are they planning to do? And so Batman strong arms Martian the Manhunter to help him because he knows that Martian the Manhunter is weak to fire. Before Batman leaves, he hands Martian the Manhunter an artifact that relates to the cult book that they found in our last video. Finally, we pick up with Wonder Woman again, and we see that she has been given a medal by the president at the press conference. Now, this is a very important moment because you have Wonder Woman trying to tell the world at the press conference about her time over in Vietnam. But she is cut off short by President Eisenhower as a way to keep quiet about what happened over there. Because remember that in the real world, the American government tried to paint a picture that there is a good reason for the army being over there. But to the public back home, there wasn't. But Wonder Woman saw some things over there and feels like the world should know about it. Except she never got the chance at the press conference nor the chance to talk to Eisenhower about it after the conference. Getting back to Hal Jordan, this is where we and Hal learn more of what the American government project is on Carol Ferris' base, because we see her escorting him into a bunker, where of course he has another run-in with Richard Flagg, the person he already expressed that he does not like. But this is Flagg letting Hal know that he is going to be part of this team, this secret project. But Flagg won't be the one explaining what the project is about. Actually, it is going to be a man named King Faraday. I'm pretty sure I got that name correctly. This is taking things from the last couple issues and building off those things to help make this project more interesting. The first thing Faraday tells Hal is about what happened after World War II. The scientists who were working for Germany, well, they were taken away from Germany and shared between all of the allies. Except to the American government, it seems that most of the smarter ones went to Russia, because those scientists helped Russia send a spaceship into space. So America's goal is to catch up. And with that, we get the formation of NASA. We learn they're going to send 7 people into space. And no, not Hal Jordan. But Faraday proceeds on to talk about Richard Flagg in Task Force X, that apparently the losers were the original Suicide Squad, the ones we saw in the beginning of our coverage over this series. They died on Dinosaur Island, but when Flagg got back, they formed a new Suicide Squad, Task Force X, and there were 2 parts of Task Force X. One part is known as Agents, who deal with covert apps, quietly arresting men and villains and other threats to America. While the other group, the Suicide Squad, they deal with paranormal activity. But Faraday explains that America knows about Martian the Manhunter. They know he's on Earth, thanks to Adrel, the man who brought Martian the Manhunter to Earth. So, to the government, there is a threat of beings coming from Mars. And the question is, what can they do? So they created a secret government space program with Carol Ferris Corporation as a cover, so they can finish this project and proceed to prepare themselves for Mars attacks. Now, after discussing all of that, that is when you have Faraday explain to Hal that Hal is going to join Task Force X, that he'll be working with Richard Flagg, the man he does not like. Of course, you have Hal showing again about him not liking Richard Flagg, but of course, he is now part of Task Force X. But also that NASA is not really working to just go to space, but to go to Mars. Now we do get to jump back to Martian the Manhunter again, where he had gone back to the police department of Gotham City so he can try to retrieve the book him and Batman found in our last video. The artifact Batman had found, of course, opens the book up easily, and there is a story about a young prince, a Viking prince. In this story, long story short, it was really just a prince who found Dinosaur Island way back then, but of course did not know what a dinosaur was. But after reading the book, at the end, there is a picture that makes Martian the Manhunter worried. So he goes to put his hand on the picture, but he does get this electrical shock from the book. From that shock, he tells us the world is doomed because this evil entity is already here on Earth. It is going to bring doom to the whole world. And this is where
What is going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. This time, we're going to jump back over to DC Comics and continue our coverage over DC New Frontier. We're going to pick back up with issue number 4, and in this one, it is more of putting heroes in new positions in their lives. It is them trying to understand how to handle these new situations. At the same time, some characters will quit being a hero. So if you like today's comic book video, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come like this in the near future. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's video.
Open and go with this issue, we pick up in Central City with, of course, everybody's favorite Scarlet Speedster, the Flash, where we learn that apparently Gorilla Grodd is attacking the city, and so you have the Flash going in town to stop him. But when he gets there, he comes to find out that it was a robot.
that this was a trap. And this is reminding us that in this world, if you're not working for the American government, basically being a vigilante, the public hates you and you are an outlaw. But the person who is leading this plan of capturing the Flash is King Faraday. And we met him in our last video. He is in charge of putting together a rocket to send a team to Mars because he knows that Martian the Manhunter is on Earth. But getting back to the main point of this section, this is Flash knowing that the government wants to capture him and make him their property, and so he leaves. But skipping into Central City, we pick up with Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris, reminding us that they are now dating even though she is his boss. And they are at an auto show and meeting up with Ace Morgan and June Robbins. Because remember that Ace Morgan and Hal Jordan are best friends. This is also Ace Morgan introducing June Robbins as the newest member to the Challengers of the Unknown team, this small team of heroes. Now we get to focus on Martian the Manhunter, who is still pretending to be John Jones in Gotham City as a detective. But we learn that while being on Earth, he has been collecting newspapers reports about UFO sightings and John Henry, who is out fighting against racism in Tennessee, where Martian Manhunter actually likes John Henry for doing the right thing. But then you have his fellow police officers say they have a crazy guy that needs to be interrogated because he shot a police officer and kidnapped his mother. This man's name is Harry Litter. This continues on with Martian the Manhunter using his ability to read minds to learn that Harry Litter works for Carol Ferris Aircraft Base, the same place where Hal Jordan works at. Where we know that at that place, the American government knows that Martian the Manhunter is on Earth. Also, they are planning to fly to Mars to see if they can deal with the Martians. But see, Harry Litter shot that police officer and kidnapped his mom because learning that freaked him out. Now, this conversation is stopped by, of course, King Faraday. With King Faraday showing up, this means he is here to make sure that Harry Litter does not spill any government secret about the government knowing that Martian the Manhunter is here on Earth. Also them trying to go to Mars to deal with the Martian problem. With Faraday being here, this also means he gets to meet with Martian the Manhunter. And Martian does use his powers to gather more proof that everything Harry was saying is true. The American government knows that Martian the Manhunter is here on Earth. But picking up with Hal, Richard Flagg, and the rest of Task Force X, we see them in a rocket simulation, them just practicing for anything to come while being in space. The problem is that Hal shows off in this simulation, which leads to them failing. And so with that happening, Richard Flagg had enough of Hal Jordan and told him he is off this mission now. Which of course you have Richard Flagg and Carol Ferris arguing about the status of Hal Jordan being on the mission, where Carol Ferris tries to state that because this is her base, she can make the call and have him stay on the team. Except Richard Flagg reminds her she can't really make that call since this is an American government mission, meaning that it's a no for one, but also that now Carol Ferris is mad at Hal for his actions. Now we get to pick up with John Henry. Remember, in the last video and earlier in this video, we talked about how John Henry lost his family thanks to the KKK, and he became a vigilante to fight against racism. Well, his career as a vigilante is short-lived because we learn by this point he was shot and tried to hide in a nearby town, since there was a group of KKK trying to kill him off. Except when he runs into a random person's backyard, a small girl greets him. He thinks with her being a child, she will help to hide him. except she doesn't, and calls over the KKK group so they can kill him off. And there is a page I'm going to skip basically because of some language in this book. Now, John Henry's death reaches national news, where on a show called The Big Picture, his death was used to show how America is a hypocrite country, where America is so worried about other countries and their internal racial or government issues that America can't see that they have their own internal racial or government issues. This show is being played across the nation, so people of Metropolis, Philadelphia, and even Gotham City, where John Jones, aka the Martian the Manhunter, saw the show. With Martian the Manhunter seeing the show about the person he had respect for, John Henry, it makes him realize that with him being a Martian, he can never show the world his true form. Picking up on Paradise Island, the home of the Amazons, we pick up with Superman going there to meet up with Wonder Woman, where we learn that she stopped working for the American government, and Superman does not understand why, where she explains that she was forced out because of her ideals, that the country they fought for together is no longer around, meaning that the country ideals have changed into something she can't fight for anymore. She even tells Superman that they need an idol. He needs to use his powers to be a role model for the people to look up to, not people in the government office. Then she flies away. This idea of America being a hypocrite country is shown even more when we get to Martian the Manhunter thinking about what happened to John Henry and what he should do now. But while watching the news, that is when the Flash appears on TV and talks about how he decided to use his powers to help people and protect the world from evil things, except he has been labeled as an outlaw, and talks about the American government trying to capture him, stating that he is at the point where he is officially retiring being a hero. With the Flash quitting, it basically gives Martian the Manhunter the idea that he needs to try to get back home. But before he can go back home, he has to pass everything he learned about the cult, the center, to Batman. Remember, they agreed to work together. Well, more really Batman forcing him to help. But at the end of our last book, Martian the Manhunter learned that for one, something evil is coming to Earth, but also the book holds tons of stories throughout time. And so you have Martian the Manhunter go to the rooftop of the GCPD to tell Batman that he can find everything he needs at his apartment about the center. But Batman tells this person to meet him next Tuesday because apparently he figures something out about the book. Then we proceed to the big day, where we see that Task Force X is about to begin the launch of their rocket into space and hoping to land on Mars. But before they fly off, you have Hal apologizing to Richard Flagg about showing off earlier, and Richard Flagg accepts his apology, but this is important for a moment later on in the book. So after that, you have everyone get on the rocket, and we learn that the rest of the world thinks that this is just America doing a missile test, not actually trying to send people into space. But while getting ready for launch, Faraday sees Martian the Manhunter on the monitor trying to sneak onto the rocket, hoping to get a free trip back home. And so you have Faraday actually go down to deal with Martian the Manhunter. Now when he does confront him, Martian the Manhunter mentions that he knows that he can easily deal with Faraday and get on the rocket, except the rocket is about to fly off and the blast of the rocket could kill them both. And so right when the rocket blasts off, you have him being able to save Faraday, but now Martian the Manhunter is stuck on Earth once again. After doing that, 30 hours have passed where Martian the Manhunter wakes up in a cell where he is greeted by Faraday. At first, this may seem like the moment where Faraday might say some hurtful things about Martian the Manhunter. In reality, it is more of Faraday asking why Martian the Manhunter saved him, and Martian the Manhunter states that he could not let someone die when he had the ability to save them. Also, he can tell deep down that Faraday is a good person and has hope for the human race. But then you have Faraday go back to the monitor room, where he learns that the rocket is malfunctioning, meaning that basically this could be the death of Richard Flagg and the Suicide Squad. And so with that being said, you have everybody trying to figure out what they can do to save the rocket and save Task Force X, who is on the rocket. But there is some kind of special cargo on the rocket. Before we can see them try to figure out what to do with the special cargo, you have Richard Flagg give us a heartfelt moment with him talking to Hal through the comms, where he talks about how he fought alongside Hal Jordan's father in World War II. While in the war, Hal's father was the only one to have a family on the squad, and so the squad agreed to make sure to help protect him so he could see his family. Of course, he died, but then Richard Flagg mentions how he wanted to make sure to keep Hal alive, and that was another reason why he was not allowed to be on the mission, knowing this mission could be the death of everyone on the rocket. But then Hal gets a call through his comm. It is Ace Morgan and the Challengers of the Unknown saying that they're going to try to save the rocket in space. This proceeds into Ace Morgan talking about going to the rocket and trying to save everyone on the rocket. The problem is that the special cargo has a mixture of weapons and bombs that were going to be used to kill off the Martians on Mars. So if the bombs go off, it can pollute the air, killing people off on Earth. Of course, this leads into Faraday calling the only hero they have working for the government now, which of course is Superman. Now this is the mess up moment of the book, because you have two members of the Challengers of the Unknown trying their best to help out with the rocket, making sure the rocket does not explode. Of course, Richard Flagg realizes that he needs to go ahead and let the bomb explode now before it can affect the Earth. This is where we learn one thing for sure, that Richard Flagg and Karen were a couple. They love each other a lot, and they died together as they let the bomb explode. But Superman was able to save the Challengers of the Unknown team before they were killed off by the bomb. But sadly, Richard Flagg and Karen are now dead. So with the failure of the mission to go to Mars to hopefully kill off the Martians, also the death of Richard Flagg and other members of Task Force X, everyone is kind of sad about it. And so you have Hal spend some time with the rocket simulator, where he thinks he will never be able to go to space. But that is when there's an explosion and we see a green light, and that light takes Hal away. We know he is gone by Carol Ferris going down to the sub-level where Hal was at to find out that he is missing. And this
What is going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. Today, we are going to jump back over to DC Comics and continue our coverage over DC New Frontier. And we're going to pick up with issue number 5. Now,
In this one right here, this is the book that brings everyone together and gets them ready to fight a very powerful enemy coming to America. The question is, can all the heroes work together and get ready to fight this big threat that is coming? So if you do like today's comic book video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's video. This book starts off kind of where our last video left off at, which we saw Hal Jordan being pulled away by a Green Lantern ring. We start off with Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen getting a tour of Challenger Island, the base of the Challengers of the Unknown, a small team here in the comics. But while they are getting a tour, Ace Morgan is getting a call from his dear friend Hal Jordan, who on the other side of the phone is freaking out because he is holding a Green Lantern ring. He has no idea what to do with the ring, and should he even tell Ace Morgan about the ring. He hangs up the phone without telling Ace Morgan about the ring. This is where the book leads us into showing Hal Jordan walking over to the grave of Abin Sur, just confirming that his origin is kind of the same when it comes to him getting the Green Lantern ring. Also tell us how Abin Sur died, because this book focuses on the idea of the color yellow as a weakness to the Green Lanterns, something that was changed in the main DC universe by Jeff Johns. But in this book, it is still the same. The color yellow is a weakness, which ties into the death of Abin Sur, saying that when the Flying Cloud, the device that was used in the last book by the Challengers of the Unknown, when they were hoping to save Richard Flagg, part of that explosion gave out the color yellow, which killed the ring of Abin Sur when he was flying into Earth and led to him dying. Before dying, he told his ring to find the next best Green Lantern, and of course, it was Hal Jordan. Even though Hal feels like he should not have been chosen, because after what happened in our first video with him killing a Korean soldier, losing all of his courage, Abin Sur tells him that courage comes in different forms. Also, Abin Sur tells Hal that the reason he came to Earth is because some big threat is coming. But this is the moment where Hal Jordan decides to test out what he can do with the ring, where of course he is flying high, something he always wanted to do. But this leads into him trying to reach space, except something stops him, which of course it is something called a phantasm that tells him he is not ready to go into space just yet. He will be called through his power battery. After that, you have Hal realize that he has to hide the evidence of Abin Sur in the crash simulator that was brought with him when the ring grabbed him. And so he used his ring to pick up a boulder to bury everything, only to be scared by a rattlesnake and drop the boulder. Leads into a huge shockwave happening for the next 30 seconds. And so he had to learn how to use the ring to shield him from falling pieces of debris. But getting back to Challenger Island of the Unknown, you have Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen meeting up with Professor Haley, who is examining a sample of a dinosaur, because recently dinosaurs have been appearing left and right. We have seen that back in our last video, but before he is able to talk about the sample, that is when Rocky, another member of the team, tells everyone about another dinosaur attack happening in Florida. And so the team leaves with Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen tagging along. Now we pick up at the Daily Planet, where of course we pick up with Superman himself as he is looking over things about the center. First question I had when we got to this section is, when did Superman get involved in trying to figure out about the center? But before we learn how he got involved in this topic, you have Superman reading the book King of Monster Island, which was written by Theodore Simmel, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who committed suicide after completing the book. But in the book, he talks about the Centauri, this being that has been around since the dinosaurs. How that after the asteroid hit the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs, this being was the one to restore the Earth back to what it was before the asteroid hit. After saving the Earth, it watches humans grow and become violent. And so with that happening, the creature decides it is time to leave the Earth, but before doing that, it must wipe out the human race. This leads into Superman going to Gotham City, where of course he meets up with Batman. Also, that Batman now has a sidekick, which of course is Robin. We get Dick Grayson in this book, but this section really tells us that Batman and Superman are actually friends, are allies really, which is a plot twist because remember that it was told to us back in the first issue that Batman and Superman fought, and Batman won that fight. Well, we learned that it was a ruse. With Batman supposedly winning that fight, it gave him more freedom to be the hero he wanted to be for Gotham. Also, this section is telling us Superman was the one Batman contacted in our last video after he gathered the information from Martian the Manhunter about the center. That these two are trying to work together to figure out what this creature is, because remember, the author of the book killed himself after finishing it. But the way the book was written, it seems like something was controlling him. Over on Paradise Island, we see Wonder Woman trying to train her fellow Amazons, except an attack from something comes and we have no idea what it is, but of course the Amazons have to fight against this mysterious creature. But we do get to finally see Martian the Manhunter, and we see that he is still locked up in a cell after being captured by King Faraday in our last video. Except we see that they have become friends of sorts, but Martian the Manhunter can't leave since he is technically an American prisoner. They are playing chess, but this is more of showing that Martian the Manhunter was right about Faraday. In our last video, he said Faraday really has good in his heart, and it could help lead mankind in the right direction of not being racist against other people. Also, them talking about the big threat that is coming to Earth, and wonders if the American forces are ready to handle that threat. Meanwhile, the challengers had arrived at the dinosaur threat in Florida that we heard about earlier, but they are told to back off and let Bishop 6 actually handle that threat, which at first they wonder what in the world is Bishop 6. Of course, meaning that the American government called in Superman, who comes in and handles the dinosaur very quickly. But in the ocean, an Atlantean prince is following the center monster as it is swimming through the ocean. The Atlantean prince knows that the monster is seeking to cleanse the surface of the humankind. Now back to Superman and the challengers of the unknown and what is happening in Florida. They found out something big was coming towards Florida and already took out a number of Navy ships. While Superman and the challengers of the unknown are looking at the dinosaur Superman took out earlier, that is when Wonder Woman appears in her invisible jet. And you can clearly see the inside that something is wrong because there's blood everywhere. Superman goes to grab her and figure out what is wrong with her, where she tells him that she had to come here and warn him about what is coming this way, that her and her sisters failed, and then she passes out from bleeding out all over the place. We then see another member of the Challengers of the Unknown flying where Dinosaur Island used to be yet, because they think that the dinosaurs are coming from the island. Except when Red Ryan gets there, the island is no longer there. And so now the concern is, where in the world is Dinosaur Island at? 1 hour passes by after the first dinosaur being taken out, and then we see a broadcast coming from Lois Lane, where she is reporting what is happening over there, and something big is coming and taking out stuff left and right. This is being broadcast all over the nation, which is a good thing because one person does see it and decides to come out of retirement. That one person is no other than the Flash himself, because remember, back in our last video, he retired. The reason why is because even though he was being a hero, he was technically a vigilante. With him being one, that means it was an illegal activity that he was doing. But he also retired to protect Iris West, afraid of her getting hurt. Except she tells him that she knew about him being the Flash and encouraged him to get back out there as the Flash to protect the city, which of course he does put the outfit back on and gets out there to help. Back over to Faraday and Martian the Manhunter, we see him talking to Martian the Manhunter about what is going on in Florida. Also the fact that Martian the Manhunter is feeling a high immense level of mental power coming from the center, the monster in Florida. And so you have Faraday to feel like it would be best for Martian the Manhunter to come with him, which he agrees to. Martian the Manhunter changes his appearance to look more friendly and they head off to Florida. Then we see that with the broadcast from Lois Lane earlier, other heroes like Green Arrow, but also a group of war heroes like the Sea Devils and the Blackhawks are going to head there to see if they can help stop the center. Finally getting back to Hal Jordan, we see him hiding out in a motel, waiting to be called through the Green Lantern power battery, except that is when he also sees the broadcast and figures out that this was why Abin Sur came here to stop. So with him figuring that out, he goes back over to Carol Ferris base and decides to sneak out with one of the planes to get him to Florida, since he does not have his flying ability down just yet. But before he is able to leave, of course, he is caught by Carol Ferris, who is mad at him for disappearing and also trying to sneak off with a plane. Then she figures out that he is planning to go down to Florida to see how he can help stop the center. To Carol, Hal is trying to prove something, but she tells him that she does not think of him as a coward, instead someone who is brave. But he does explain he has to do this, and he kisses her goodbye and heads off to what could be his death. Now this is where Wonder Woman tells Superman what had happened on Paradise Island, that she and her fellow Amazons tried to stop the center, but of course they were unable to stop it. That center was sending out monsters left and right, and the numbers became too hard for the Amazons to handle, which led to, of course, most of the Amazons dying or being badly hurt, with her being the one able to fly to Superman to warn him, but tells him he must unite all of the heroes and the military people together to stop the monster. He is the only one who can do that, and then she kisses him before she passes out again. Of course, after that, Superman goes outside to see that both heroes and military people are outside arguing about their political views. Again, the whole idea of heroes being vigilantes and breaking the law are putting the law in their own hands. Except this is the moment where Superman sits down and points out that they need to come together to deal with this threat. That with them arguing with one another is not going to get them anywhere. They need to come together to actually beat the center if they want to save America and the world. which of course they all agreed to follow behind Superman and take the fight to the Sintra. Now, Superman's first plan is to go out there and see if he can talk to the monster first, but when Superman flies over there, we see some of the monsters of the Sintra attack Superman as a distraction, while the Sintra lets off a powerful blast that sends Superman flying into the middle of the ocean. The heroes saw it, and now they are freaking out because Superman was their best hero and he was taken out in a matter of seconds.
What is going on there, YouTube? And welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. Today, we're going to jump back over to DC Comics, and we're going to continue our coverage over DC The New Frontier with issue number 6. Now, this is the final issue of this overarching story that we have been covering the last 6 weeks. So if you do like today's comic book video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any other suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But today, guys, we're going to wrap up DC New Frontier in this video right here. I do hope you enjoy.
So we begin our final issue with Lois Lane kind of giving us a review over what happened in the last issue, where the Sintra had arrived to America. But with its arrival, you had all of the heroes and military come together to fight against it. Superman was the first one to go in, but was taken out instantly. He went up to the monster and it took him out in one hit. And so to the world, he is dead. And now there's barely any hope left. And so you have all the scientists coming together to figure out a plan to stop this monster from killing off America. This is where we also learn that Lois Lane actually loves Superman as well, which is a small plot twist here. We skip over to Gotham because we pick up with Bruce Wayne working with another company about sending aircrafts to South Atlantic to prepare for a massive evacuation. Also because we pick up at Arkham Asylum where we pick up with Leslie Thompson, who is letting out Adam Strange because he was locked up for talking about the Sintra and people thought he was crazy, only to find out that he wasn't. And so she lets him out hoping he can help save the world. He begins his plan by going over to Ray Palmer's house about his shrinking matter technology and how that it can help save the world. For y'all wondering what happened with Hal Jordan, remember, he stole an aircraft to help him get to Florida, to help the other heroes in the last issue. Except we find out he never made it because it ran out of power. So he decided to use his ring to charge up the battery and continue on to Florida. We jump over to the Canaveral, where all of the heroes, scientists, and military people are at as they are planning to find a way to stop the Sintra. We do see Flash punch King Faraday in the face for what happened, I think was in the last video or 2 videos ago, where Faraday tried to capture the Flash because being a vigilante was illegal. But after that, Flash walks outside and he is greeted by Adam Strange and Ray Palmer, who are looking for King Faraday and Professor Haley about their plan to stop the Sintra. Now, when they first shared their plan, not with us, but with Faraday and the others, we learned that everyone is like, that is a big no. It is going to fail big time. But then Professor Haley, a member of the Challengers of the Unknown, realized that maybe they're onto something. Before we can learn this plan, we see Faraday go outside and greet Flash, ask Flash to put their differences to the side and work together to stop the Sentry. He proceeds to ask Flash how fast is he, and Flash smiles and let us know that he is pretty fast. This is where we finally learn the big plan they come up with to stop the Sentry, which starts with having two teams attacking the monster from both sides. With that happening, it will lead into the monster being distracted. While it's distracted, the bombers team will fly into the monster with some warheads as a way to hurt the monster from the inside out. But there is another big step to their plan, because we learn that with Ray Palmer's shrinking tech, once an item has been shrunk, the object that was shrunk explodes after 90 seconds. So their goal is to use the Flash to run as fast as possible to hit the monster with Ray Palmer's tech all over its body, because once 90 seconds are over, it is going to explode. So with the bombs blowing up from the inside, at the same time, on the outside of the monster is being attacked by Ray Palmer's tech. A two-stage plan. Faraday explains why the monster attacked Florida in the last issue, because it was the fuel reserves. Remember, the monster has been around since the beginning for Earth's time basically, but it watched humans become more violent, so now it wants to leave Earth, but before it does, it wants to kill off mankind. After killing mankind off, it will leave Earth, but it needs fuel, and that is why it attacked the fuel reserve. Before they leave to attack the Sentra, of course, Hal Jordan arrives to help out with taking it down. Now you have Adam, Hal, and Ace Morgan being the team that is going to fly into the monster. Before they can, you have the other teams making sure their attack does the job, which is keeping the monster distracted as they are able to fly into the monster and begin their plan to drop the warheads inside the monster. We also see that with the dinosaurs being sent outside from the Sentra are being killed off in Florida by some of the heroes. Also because Wonder Woman has joined the battle to help out and stop the attack. Here comes the mess up part, because while the heroes are on the ground trying to fight against the monsters, Martian the Manhunter gets taken over by the Sentra through a psychic connection, so it seems that everything is going to fall apart now for them. But that is when Faraday comes to save him from Martian the Manhunter being taken over. He tells Martian the Manhunter to send the essence of the Sentry to his mind, which happens, but it kills Faraday. And so with Faraday dead, you have Martian the Manhunter decide to go off and kill more dinosaurs at a quicker rate. Inside the monster though, we see Hal, Morgan, and Adam have made it, except with them inside, they are being hit by a mental attack where they see the inside of the monster as a fragment of their personal mentality. And so for Hal, he is seeing a messed up looking solar system. Now while they're inside the monster and being attacked mentally by the monster, they are also being attacked physically by the monster. These red things are slowly destroying their aircrafts, meaning that sooner they are going to die. But this is where you have Hal think back to everything that led up to this moment. Carol Ferris, his survival in different situations, also the power ring. With that, he gained enough willpower to use the power ring as a way to save himself from being attacked mentally and physically as well. Which does lead to him trying to save Ace Morgan and Adam Strange, only to see Adam Strange die. Except before he dies, he actually completes the mission, which is to use the warheads to attack the Sentra from the inside. While the warheads are going off, you have Hal being the Green Lantern and ends up saving Ace Morgan before he could have died as well. This leads to them being able to make it out safely, which means it is now time for part 2 of their plan. So you have the Flash begin part 2, which is using his speed to be able to hit the Sentry with Ray Palmer's tech to shrink it down. He is doing an amazing job, but there is now another problem, because the Sentry knows that he will blow up thanks to the after effect of Ray Palmer's tech. So his goal is to make it to the shore and blow up and take out as many people and military people all at once. Luckily, there is Hal being the Green Lantern. He puts down Ace Morgan as he uses his ring to take the Sentry to space. While trying to achieve this goal, that is when he is reached out by the Guardians of the Universe, when they tell him they have unlocked the willpower of his lantern. So he is able to use more power to send the Sentry out into space. The day is saved thanks to Hal being able to throw the Sentry out into space and it blows up. With the Sentry defeated, of course, you have all the heroes coming together to celebrate the fact that they were able to get rid of the Sentry. This is also the moment we learn that Superman did not die in our last video. That Aquaman, but not calling himself Aquaman, had saved Superman when he fell in the ocean. He has been taking care of Superman's wounds. But you have all of the heroes come together to celebrate the fact that they were able to defeat the Sentry. Superman and Lois Lane, of course, kiss because they love each other. Of course, this is the moment where we learn that the world has a new look when it comes to superheroes. That it leads to the formation of the Justice League, but also the birth of the race of supervillains. And so now you have a DC world where we have heroes and villains. Finally, the book ends with us getting a report of the Justice League fighting against Starro, like they did in Justice League of America #1. But this is the end of the book. And this is where we are going to end today's video. So please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's video.